All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're diving into something really out there. It's a system of thought from the ancient Indian Siddhas. These were sages who, according to some incredible texts, didn't just map out the cosmos, but actually created a step-by-step guide on how to travel right through it. So let's just start with the big question right up front. Is it possible that ancient mystics figured out space travel, black holes, and even time travel way before modern science even had a name for these things? It's a pretty wild claim, but it's the core idea we're digging into today. The source for this explainer, which is based on the teachings of Yogi Raja Krishnamurti, says, yeah, they didn't just think about it, they actually did it.
And this quote right here, it just says it all, doesn't it? The argument is that while our best scientists today are theorizing about things like wormholes, ancient sages like the great Thirumoolar had already turned it into a practical, working science. They'd finished the project.
Okay, so where does all this come from? Let's start our journey by looking at the source of these pretty unbelievable claims. Our main guide for this whole exploration is Thirumoolar, an ancient Tamil sage. His writings are basically the foundation for this entire cosmic system of knowledge. Now, it is really important to get this straight. We're not just talking about some, vague philosophy or myths here. The source material describes the work of the Siddhas as a super technical, detailed system. Think of it less like a story and more like a how-to guide to the universe, one that blends deep spiritual work with some seriously advanced technology, all laid out in texts like Thirumoolar's famous work, the Tirumantaram.
All right, so like any great journey, the first thing you need is a map. So what did the cosmos actually look like to Thirumoolar? Well, he laid out a very specific structure of reality, and that's the first step to understanding how you could possibly travel through it. According to these ancient texts, the universe isn't just one thing. It's actually made up of 5 totally distinct, separate layers or dimensions. You can imagine them like 5 cosmic planes of existence, sort of stacked, and each one is its own unique reality, and it gets even bigger. Within those 5 main layers, Thirumoolar wrote that there are 1,008 universes, or what he called Andam. And this idea of an Andam, it's basically their version of what we'd call a galaxy. So we're talking about a multi-layered reality that has over 1,000 galaxies in it.
And this is where things get, well, kind of wild. You've got this ancient idea clashing with the modern world in a pretty startling way. The source draws a direct line between Thirumoolar's old-school cosmology and one of the most cutting-edge ideas in physics right now, string theory. I mean, both systems, thousands of years apart, are talking about a reality built from multiple dimensions or parallel universes, all separate, but maybe, just maybe, connected. Okay, so that's the map of the universe. But how in the world do you actually travel through it? Thirumoolar's system is very specific. It's not about rockets or warp drives or anything like that. No, it all comes down to 2 fundamental keys. One that's all about you, and one that's about technology. It's this 2-part method, and you absolutely have to do it in order. First, you, the traveler, have to completely transform yourself. Through some really intense spiritual practice, you purify your own physical body until it literally becomes a body of pure light, something called Oli Udambu. And only then, after you've achieved that, can you use the second key, a very specific piece of alchemical tech. And that key piece of tech, it's called the kulagai. Now, the texts say this isn't just some simple pill you swallow. It's a super sophisticated alchemical device. It's made by taking the pure essence, the satu, from tons of different things, like metals, gems, minerals, even poisons, and then concentrating all of that down into one small, powerful bead. This little kulagai, that's the engine for the whole trip. All right, so you've got your light body, you've got your alchemical pill. How does this stuff actually work? Well, the way it's explained is, honestly, it sounds a lot like quantum physics and what we think we know about black holes today. So let's dig into the weird properties of this kulagai. The old texts claim it can soak up the essence from all sorts of things. But get this, its own weight and mass don't change at all. The source compares this to how massless particles act in quantum physics. This absorbed essence, which is now basically in a quantum state, lets the kulagai spin, like incredibly fast. And that spin creates a force so powerful, it can just blow past gravity and travel through space-time itself. So where are you going with this thing? The idea here is that the Siddhas knew about black holes. They called them Karuntli, but they didn't see them as just destructive voids. They saw them as doorways. When a traveler goes in, the mass of gravity basically deconstructs their light body into pure information. That information then zips over to a matching exit, a white hole or a ventili, and you get perfectly put back together again. It's like a cosmic teleporter, which, leads to the big question. Why? Why go through all this trouble? Why undertake this just unbelievable journey? Because in this system, the why you're doing it is maybe even more important than the how. See, this was never about, space tourism or planting a flag on another world. Thirumoolar wasn't collecting rock samples. For these sages, traveling through all 1008 universes, that was a spiritual quest, a pilgrimage to find ultimate truth. And the ultimate destination, the end of the line, it's called samadhi. But it's not a place on a map. It's a state of being. After you've seen everything, after you've traveled through every single universe, you finally achieve this perfect unity with the divine consciousness that made it all in the first place. The individual you disappears, and you become one with everything. And that brings us full circle, right back to our guide, Thirumoolar, who basically summed up his whole incredible trip just like this. He went, he saw it all, and at the end of it all, the real point of the journey was to let go of the self and just merge with the source of everything. So what are we left with here? Whether you take this as a literal instruction manual for space travel or as a really deep metaphor for an inner journey, it kind of forces you to look at these ancient texts a little differently, not just as dusty old relics, but maybe as books filled with incredibly complex knowledge. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other secrets could be hiding in plain sight, just waiting for us to look at them in a new way?